Welcome back. All right, so in discussing teams that are below the playoff line, I'm going back to the West on this one, and I'm doing this one a little bit differently than a lot of the other ones, too. So each of these will be somewhat different because every team's in a unique position. And Dallas, it is a very unique position in that from one week to the next, they might look like a team that really needs to figure this out, or they might look like a team that could be in contention and could be dangerous like they were in 2020. That run in 2020 was fantastic. But much like Montreal's run in 2021, it gave an impression Dallas was closer than they really are. 2021, they missed the playoffs. Now we're in 2022, and they're still not at the playoff line. And over their last 10, they're 5-5. Their upcoming schedule will tell us a lot about where they're at. So tonight, they're playing at home against Nashville. They've got 2 more home games after that against Winnipeg and Colorado. Winnipeg's a team they need to keep behind them because they can't afford to have more teams getting ahead of them. And then they've got Colorado at home before they go to Colorado for the next game. So that home and home with Colorado could go a long way too. Then they go to Chicago. They go to Arizona. Those are 2 winnable games. Before they come home, they play Winnipeg yet again. Then they go to Nashville. Then they're at home against Buffalo and LA. So over their next 10 games, if we look at winnable games, you've got 2 against Winnipeg, 1 against Arizona, 1 against Chicago, Buffalo, you've got LA in there. So they could go 5-5 in their next 10 as well. And that's the thing with Dallas. They tend to be not bad. And dating back to, I remember 2011, all they had to do was win a game in the last week of the season, and nope. And so they lost their way out of the playoffs. And it wasn't the only time Dallas had done that, where they looked like they should make the playoffs and then they didn't. And at certain points this season, it's looked like they should be in the top 8, but they're not. They're 4 points back at Calgary. They've played 1 more game. Now, if you're looking at draft picks and what they might be able to offer or what they might be looking for, they have all of their own draft picks. They don't have any extra picks. And so they're not really in a position where they can necessarily trade away a second or a first or something like that with the idea of what you might be able to get at the deadline. I really hope that's not being considered by Jim Nill and management. But they're in an interesting spot that their upcoming prospects, I do wonder about how high the ceiling is. Thomas Harley, I like Harley on the blue line. I think he's going to be good. Ty Dellandrea, did they rush Dellandrea into the NHL? Does that hurt his development? What's Dellandrea's ceiling? He's a forward. Riley Damiani's a forward. I've liked his energy when he's been in the lineup. I'm hopeful with him. And then there's Wyatt Johnston, who was seen as kind of a reach when they drafted him this past year. And Logan Stankoven. And Stankoven may very well end up being one of those diamonds in the rough amongst their prospects. So we will see with this upcoming group what Dallas has. But what's interesting with Dallas is I've arranged them by who makes the most money. Because this is where I think Dallas's issue lies, is that you're spending right now about 24 million between these 3 players, and one of the 3 is living up to that money. Tyler Seguin, $9.85 million cap hit until 2027. So it's 5 years beyond this one. 43 games, 14 goals, 9 assists, 23 points. Sagan's been better lately, but his overall season has not been good enough. Then you've got Jamie Benn, who's making $9.5 million until 2025. 43 games, 11 goals, 9 assists, and 20 points. So that means that $19.35 million of the cap for over the next 3 years for Dallas goes to Benn and Seguin, which made sense at the time these contracts are signed, but this is the thing with long-term contracts. And, for Seguin, it just, between injury and everything else, it just hasn't been where you want it to be. And, yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how Dallas navigates this. Because they're not a bad team, but the guys who are making the big money generally haven't lived up to it. Pavelski has. $7 million. He's a free agent this summer. Can they afford to keep him? How much do they pay him? Do you give him a 2-year deal? Do you give him 3? Sign him till he's 40, right? 43 games for Pavelski this year. 19 goals, 29 assists, 48 points. So if you're alarmed about Kadri having, over 60 points in what looks like a career year and you don't want to sign him to too much money, Pavelski being above a point per game should be giving off some of those same alarms. Pavelski's always hardworking, though, and you're always going to get that effort from him. But, yeah, you don't want to be spending big money for when eventually that ability to produce like that drops off, right? And so that's the question that'll be asked with Kadri, but it should be asked with Pavelski as well, who is much older than Kadri. Radulov, $6.25 million. He's a free agent this summer. 37 games, 2 goals, 13 assists, 15 points. And yes, Radulov's been slowed a bit by injury, but he's just this is where Radulov's at now. And so we'll see if after the All-Star break he starts to get things going or whatever, but it does feel like Radulov's $6.25 million coming off the books might be exactly the right time once you get into the guys who are due for a raise. Radek Faksa signed for 3 more years. $3.25 million is his cap hit. 41 games, 2 goals, 9 assists, 11 points. I like Faksa. It might be a little bit high at $3.25 million for him, and again, that's because you're getting 2 goals from him. But he's a useful forward, good on faceoffs. I like Faksa, and I don't think it hurts Dallas that much yet. Because then you get into Rope Hintz, $3.15 million. He's a restricted free agent next summer. He'll get a raise. 41 games, 20 goals, 17 assists, 37 points. So now we're getting into one of the line mates of Pavelski that's helping to keep this team afloat, keep the playoff dream alive. Gurianov, $2.55 million in cap hit for him. 22 is when his contract's up as well as a restricted free agent. 39 games, 6 goals, 13 assists, 19 points. I think his cap hit's right about where it should be. I don't foresee a big raise for him necessarily unless the team believes there's a lot of upside there and that he'll get back to 30 goal form. And then Robertson. Robertson really has transformed the forward group in Dallas, much like Kaprizov has for Minnesota. $795,000 is the cap hit this year. Yeah, they're not spending that much, but that cap hit, that sweetheart cap hit, it disappears this summer. And as a restricted free agent, he should be asking for and receive an 8-year deal. And when you look at how much money they're spending on other guys, would it be wrong for him to look at Benn and Sagan and say, well, I'm able to produce at this level. I should get at least close to what they're getting. I don't think he'd be wrong in saying it. 35 games for Robertson, 17 goals, 24 assists, 41 points. And then on the blue line, you got Heiskanen, who's making $8.45 million until 2029. I don't think the production's been as high as they might have liked, but in 42 games, 4 goals, 23 assists, 27 points, he's a very useful defenseman. Then you've got Lindell, $5.8 million until 2025. That might be a little bit high. I mean, and again, it all depends on your point of view on this. Lindell, though, mostly a stay-at-home guy, 43 games, 3 goals, 11 assists, 14 points. Might they have overpaid with Lindell? That is possible, and again, you can make that argument. Klingberg, $4.25 million for this year. He wants an extension. He and Dallas do not agree on the extension. Thus, he has asked for a trade. So Klingberg gets moved at the deadline. That $4.25 million comes off the books, but you'll have to add money to the books as well because most teams, it's going to have to be dollar in and dollar out. 37 games for Klingberg, 1 goal, 27 assists, 23 points. Klingberg's been good. And again, if he wants that big long-term contract, I do expect Dallas to walk away from that because when we look here, this is what happened here. Benn and Sagan, they didn't want to lose them, and so they signed them to really big contracts. So right now, you would think they'd have to be regretting on some level. They'd rather have that $19 million right now, I would think, than Benn and Sagan. As much as Benn has been the face of the team for a very long time, and Sagan has at times been a fantastic forward, cap space is gold in today's NHL. And then you get into Ryan Suter. $3.65 million cap hit until 2025. 43 games, 4 goals, 13 assists, 17 points. Suter is not the same defenseman he was, say, a decade ago, but I think he's been useful for Dallas. I don't think that $3.65 million hurts them now, but again, looking down the road, we shall see how the cap is going to work for them or work against them. Then you get to the goaltending. Holtby signed for just $2 million for 1 year, and he's had a 9-9-1 record, .913 save percentage. I think Dallas will talk to him about an extension. I'd kind of be surprised if Holtby doesn't want to stay in Dallas because it's been a pretty good fit. Ottinger, $925,000 cap hit. He's a restricted free agent this summer. I would expect him to end up making a little more than Holtby's $2 million, as his record's 11-5 with a .912 save percentage. Ottinger has been solid, and I think there's a lot of upside there as well. And then you have Hudobin. I think what holds back Anton Khudobin is something simple. His cap hit, although it's partly buried in the AHL right now, $3.33 million, right? So Dallas right now is looking at about a $2 million cap hit for Khudobin being in the minors because you write off a certain amount. Now, this contract runs till next year, though. So it's not that a team can just grab Khudobin and you're good. He's got a contract next year as well. So trading Khudobin, as much as I see people saying, well, they should just go get him, GM looks at that and they might say, oh, that's a $3 million plus cap hit next year. And then I'm ending up potentially having to put him in the minors as well or figure something else out. He's 3-4-1 this year with an .879 save percentage. So the big question for me is, I mean, I'm not getting into who might be available for rentals or what they might need to add, because I think Dallas is in this no man's land. Are they going to make the playoffs? Being 4 points behind Calgary, having played one extra game, and having multiple teams to leapfrog to get into the playoffs, my answer is probably not. But again, it's just a probably, right? They are capable of going on runs. They showed in 2020 that if they come together as a team, they can be very tough to play against, and they can go on a playoff run as well. So I do think that this is a team that is built with the idea of winning now. I don't know that they're necessarily capable of that, though, at this point. And so whether they're sellers or not at the deadline will depend on what happens in these upcoming games. I do wonder if they're going to need extra draft picks, and then we can get into their drafting record, which is iffy at points. Yes, you'll notice Riley Tufte I don't have up on the upcoming, because at this point, Tufte's probably about as high as he's going to get on the depth chart. He may end up being a regular fourth liner next season. And then you get into the conversation about, okay, well, if Rick Bowness were to be dismissed by the team because they see themselves close to the playoffs, and maybe they envision themselves as, getting over this, we'll see. But for Dallas, I do still see them as probably middle of the pack, but being a little bit outside the playoffs, which could be very, very frustrating. Because again, Dallas has never really done the full-on rebuild. Like, they won the one draft lottery there to get Heiskanen, but outside of that, they haven't really had those number one, number two picks. Getting Sagan out of Boston is close. I guess if you can make those trades for other teams' first rounders, that helps. And by saying that, I mean like other players who were drafted in the first round by other teams, which some teams are very good at acquiring. But for Dallas, yeah, it's still in that unknown land between buying or selling. And I've got a bad feeling that they may try buying. They may try renting a couple of pieces at the deadline, with the idea that when Robertson needs that extension this summer, that's going to make things a lot tougher. So maybe that ups the pressure to go for it this year. Maybe add a defenseman, add a depth forward, and see if that makes a difference. But I guess the question I have, and this is for Dallas fans as well as anybody else watching, what would be the smartest route forward? Do you try to rip off the Band-Aid and do like some kind of a retool so you can genuinely get back to being a Stanley Cup contender, or stay the course and believe that this roster can pull it together? These top guys can all go on another run, and maybe they're closer than it might appear right now. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.